what does the Malta Council does with regards to R&I? We do three things mainly. We advise government policy on R&I, we implement programs, and we promote R&I programs as well. Apart from that, we also are the national contact points for Horizon 2020, and luckily enough, our entity, our public entity, also takes care of science communication. So we have an interactive science center which popularizes science amongst the general public. As you know, obviously, R&I is very important for a country's economy, and through our programs, we try to have a program which contributes to knowledge transfer, collaborative research environments, and translational research, commercial realization of solutions to challenges, which in turn achieves transformation and step change technological improvements and accelerates next generation technology. Okay, so back in 2014, the Council launched a national R&I strategy, and its aim was to build an enabling framework for R&I in Malta, and this was focused on priority areas. We came up with these areas after consultation with university and the private sector, and we focused on 8 priority areas, which are quite generic, and there's some overlap as well, which are health, resource-efficient buildings, high value-added manufacturing, aquaculture, ICT, tourism product development, maritime services, aviation, and aerospace. If we take a look at the R&I funding for Malta, between 2004 and 2013, we had a large number of projects in the beginning which applied for funds. However, as you can see, they were small projects. In comparison, today, we are giving around 200,000 euros for each project. The problem up to 2013 was that the areas of the R&I of specialization were not defined, and there was not a proper structure. So we wanted to make this better, and we came up with a commercialization voucher program. This CVP, as we called it, is a feasibility study which we wanted local companies to assess whether they are commercially viable before we invest public funds in their research and development. So we branded this program as Fusion, and we divided the program into parts. So the first part, we called it a CVP, Commercialization Voucher Program, and the second part, the Technology Development Program. The first part, as I said, identified the commercialization potential, and there the TDP, we supported the project to develop the actual technology. Under the TDP, we supported research projects at various technology maturity levels, covering different areas. As a program, it's similar to the Horizon 2020 SME program, but it is more guided as an approach for the entities. As you can see then, from the 2013 to the present, after we've introduced the CVP, the project quality increased, but the number of projects have decreased, obviously, because there was more work involved in applying for the program, but we are quite happy with the number and quality, especially of the projects. As an overview of how our program works, so the first part, the box at the top, shows the CVP program. The companies are assigned a service provider which undertakes consultancy services. So we limited them on charge-out rates, but the service providers provide the company with an IP check, with market research, with product development costing, economic impact, and a risk profile. There are evaluators at each stage who make sure that the companies are getting maximum value from the service providers. For each stage, a report is generated, and if the company gets a specific mark above 350 out of 500, then the company can advance to the next stage, which is the TDP, the Technological Development Program. The CVP, for the CVP, companies can apply on their own, but then for the TDP, there must be a public partnered with a private entity. And this makes sure that there's the knowledge transfer, the translation research that we have mentioned in the beginning. For the TDP, we have given up to 200,000 for the projects. It gives a grant for the actual development of the research and innovation, and the project duration from 1 to 3 years. Some other opportunities which Maltese companies have here. We have an International Partnerships Award Scheme, and this aims to internationalize research, and the scope is for academic institutions to collaborate with international academic institutions based within the EU. And some examples, for example, we can see we have joint teaching curricula for master's or PhD students, or placements of Maltese students abroad, etc. The Malta Council also engages in EU programs and initiatives. We have taken part in NARMNet, ERANET Med, PRIMA, and Martera, for example. And a new area for the Council is space. Obviously, to support the R&I ecosystem, we have engaged into various bilateral agreements with foreign entities and other countries. Being the national contact organization for space, we have developed a relationship with the European Space Agency, and we're furthering this through imminent implementation agreements on concrete projects. We're also developing relationships with the Italian Space Agency on small-scale upstream technology and validation, space surveillance tracking, and satellite applications. And we are furthering our relationship with the French Space Agency, CNES, on Earth observation, downstream services, and ground trotting. It's also pertinent to know that the Council has just launched a national space policy as well. So that was a brief overview of what Malta does in R&I.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
a lot. Thank you.
So now that we know now that we know what are the, let's say, alternative sources, of finance and also support apart from the ones that the European Union and especially those that are under the Horizon 2020 program. Now let's go and look cross-border and now think about what's actually the role of alternative finance for research and innovation. From your experience, Katarzyna and the other speakers, please feel free to. What's the role, for instance, for crowdfunding?
Okay.
And tell us your experience, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience of online alternative finance, because I think I can call it like that. So it's not only crowdfunding, but it's a couple of other things as well. So peer-to-peer business lending, consumer lending, equity crowdfunding, reward and donation-based crowdfunding, mini bonds, and I think I forgot about invoice trading. So this is online alternative finance. So I'm going to talk about this because we ran a study for European Commission on the potential of alternative finance for research and innovation, and I'm going to share just a little bit of information about it, but maybe not too much of the facts. So what we found out that, first of all, we cannot treat innovation and research in the same way. So totally two different things with totally two different needs, especially if we talk about online alternative finance. So what we found out that different kinds of online alternative finance are good for different and suitable for different things. So, for example, reward and donation-based crowdfunding is suitable for support basic research and applied research, whereas equity and lending, peer-to-peer lending is suitable or more appropriate for innovation and later stages of the project development. So the closer to the commercialization phase of the project, the more advanced alternative finance options are suitable. So that's one side of looking at things. The other side is that, okay, in general, we can say that the motivations to use alternative finance, online alternative finance, is totally different, and it varies. So the role is not only to provide money or to provide returns for investors or to provide money for the fundraisers that don't have it, but it's also the mean to test the product. So it's a product validation tool, especially for innovation. But both for investors and for fundraisers. It's also a way to create networks of contacts for the future. But it's also a way to support projects or promote ideas of personal interest and motivation. And this is why I talk about it, because what we learned that investors very often invest through online crowdfunding platforms, not only because they want to have higher returns, but also because they want to support something that is of their interest. So to sum up, I would say that online alternative finance is more effective for later stages of innovation cycle, innovations related to life improving conditions, so health, for example, or food and diet, or energy or environment, and projects that are low capital intensive projects. So for example, nanotechnology or space projects are not suitable for online alternative finance. So we can say that online alternative finance is good for projects that people are interested in and are able to understand in a very easy way. So something that it touches the heart in a way. And on top of that, I think that there is a trend that is very familiar to the things that we heard today. So there are specific areas that are more suitable for online alternative finance, but also because we can see that there are these clusters of platforms, of clusters of projects. So health is one of them, health and life science. So online alternative finance is suitable for this kind of projects, also for environment-related issues, and of course ICT, startups, and high-growth SMEs. So that would be the most popular areas.
Thank you. What are the views on the role of alternative finance for the other speakers?
Yes, so my idea is just to tackle it from a more generic perspective. Alternative finance obviously create another source to diversify. So you're not focusing on the industry, or Europe is not focusing on one specific or depending completely on one source of funding, where we saw a high percentage is dependent on banking, traditional funding. So it also reduces the dependency on government grants, national grants, we mentioned the grants before, or the dependency on programs which are institutionalized projects, sources. In terms of, if I had to sort of take it more from a local perspective, the role, and especially crowdfunding, we see crowdfunding in Malta playing the role between the life cycle of an enterprise, be it research, be it innovation, or anything else, is bridging the gap between personal funds, the initial round, the initial sort of first line of contact, and before becoming attractive to, or being bankable or attractive to angel investors. So there's a middle ground which I think in Malta we need to fill up and can be filled up with crowdfunding. It also generates a marketplace, we feel, where ideas and investors can actually meet up. I think in Malta things are improving, but we need to foster more the idea of the angel community and bringing them together, and obviously introducing also educational platforms there as well. But I think a platform of crowdfunding platform could actually act as a marketplace to bring these two sides together. In terms of crowdfunding, the role, as mentioned earlier, we feel other than funding, it gives other benefits. Especially we mentioned the risk, and we feel crowdfunding also helps to spread the risk amongst different players, various players, rather than having someone who's taking the full risk on certain initiatives.
Thank you. Brigitte, would you like to shed some light on the business angel?
Yeah, we believe we're at the center of everything that's being discussed, business angels. So in terms of business angels, we're individuals like myself 14 years ago. Actually, after I left Malta, I was the CEO of iWorld Group, a mobile content company. We had received 60 million of financing. And after that, I thought, okay, what next? I had helped spin out and create Expedia.com, which is a large online travel platform. I had been in the GSM chip card technology, a general manager there. And I discovered that angel investing was the best way for me to allocate 2 to 5% of my net wealth into an area where, as was mentioned before, I could bring financing, but I could also bring the know-how, the global contacts that I had, and also choose entrepreneurs that lived the values that I feel are critical. And there's two things that are really evolving. The first thing is, before, this whole area was not called an asset class. It was called having fun. It was called being crazy. It was called betting, because there's so much risk in any of the things that we're talking about, whether it's debt or equity and everything else in startups. What's wonderful is that there's more and more individuals like myself who've decided that we first want to learn. So I was named European Angel of the Year 2 years ago because I've learned a lot on how to be an investor. It's the third year in a row that we publish how angels, what the portfolios look like, and who is making money, who's less making money. So I think what's really great is that the entrepreneurs more and more are getting individuals who are still private individuals, but who are interested in investing, but also are getting to be educated on how do you help an entrepreneur through all the stages that you've said. So we estimate that there's now a couple 100,000 of us, which is more close to 10 times where we were about 10 years ago. We're investing about 3 billion a year, and which is more than what early stage VCs are at. And for any of you who are entrepreneurs, having a great angel, more and more we invest through syndicates, is a fantastic way to then add on all sorts of other types of financing that's been added. Because, for example, the awards crowdfunding is fantastic to test what the market demand is for a business, but more and more you need money to create a good campaign. So if you've raised money from angels, you can do that. There's also other forms of financing that are great once you have, like bank financing. More and more the banks are saying, hey, as an entrepreneur, come with your angel investor, because we want to see who's backing you,